Over the years, Apple's laptops have seen a myriad of changes, from thickness to processors to everything in between. But arguably the most recognizable MacBook out there is this, the Unibody MacBook Pro. This thing was the gold standard for laptop design for the 4 or 5 years that it was around. And believe it or not, that was 10 years ago now. Yeah, time flies. So today I have a question. Can you use the last Unibody MacBook, the last truly upgradable MacBook, 10 years after its announcement? Let's find out. And again, yes, this is 10 years old now. This one right here, well, not this one. This one I think was manufactured in 2015. This class of MacBook, this spec, this build, 10 years old today. June 11th, 2022. Came out June 11th, 2012. This was pre-iPhone 5. Just put that into perspective. This MacBook is older than the iPhone 5. Ugh. So let's take a look at it. Let's go over the build. This thing is ironclad. This thing is borderline indestructible. I have dropped a fair few of these and they only acquire minor dents. These things are built like tanks. They are gorgeous tanks at that. I think that's part of the reason why they're still, even 10 years later, very, very prominent. You've got an anodized aluminum unibody enclosure, which means that the casing, the frame, and like all the parts of the body have been milled from one single piece of aluminum. Got a glowing Apple logo on the back. I know people still love that and are still praying for it to come back. Unfortunately, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't think it's ever coming back. In front, you have a little cutout for the latch to get your thumb in and pull it up. An indicator light, and you have an IR sensor. This is actually the last MacBook Pro to feature the IR sensor. Left side, you've got all of your ports. You have your MagSafe 1st gen, Gigabit Ethernet, you got FireWire 800, Thunderbolt 2, two USB 3.0s, an SD card reader, and a combo headphone microphone jack, and a lovely little button right here that if you press gives you a readout of your battery. It's also the last MacBook to do this. On the right side you see two things, Kensington lock and your super drive, slot loading super drive. Again, also one of the last Macs to feature this. It really was the culmination of everything Apple had worked on till that point. Now as far as the inside, the specs, you have a dual core 2.5 gigahertz 3rd gen Intel Core i5 or i7 if you spec'd it up. You do 4, 8, or 16 gigs of memory, DDR3, 1600 megahertz, and at least on the 13 inches, you had Intel HD Graphics 4000. It's rough, it really is. And for storage, the most common config you're gonna find is a 500 gigabyte hard drive. And at 5400 RPM at that too, it was slow. It still is slow, it's really slow now. But that leads us to one of the reasons why this Mac is still very, very popular with people using MacBooks. You see these screws across the top and down the sides, these are all standard Phillips head. And once you take them off, you have access to the battery, the optical drive, the hard drive, the RAM, the Wi-Fi card. You can upgrade everything about this Mac, everything. And that is a far cry from what we're seeing now. So actually, you know what? Let's do that. Let's upgrade this Mac. So let's throw her onto the operating table here. We're just gonna have to flip her over, and then you can see there are 10 Phillips head screws. These 3 are longer than the other 7. We're just going to yank all of these out. And once those are all out, it just lifts off like that. And again, we have access to the Wi-Fi card up here, our optical drive, our hard drive, our memory, and our battery. And then if you want to get in and like repaste the CPU, you can. It's quite an involved procedure, but for those of you that actually care, you can do it. But we're not interested in that today. We're interested in the RAM and the hard drive. So what we're gonna do is just push these 2 levers out, and our memory comes up. These are two gig sticks of 1600 megahertz DDR3, and we're actually going to replace them with 2 4 gig sticks of the same speed. So really, it really is just as simple of put it in, push it down, put it in, push it down. There you go. We just doubled our memory to 8 gigs, and you can go to 16 if you want. Next up, we're gonna pull out the hard drive. There's 2 screws, they're captive screws on a little lever right here. Take that out, and then you can lift up the hard drive, access to your industry standard 2.5-inch 500 gig hard drive. These 4 screws right here, here, and here, keep it in so it doesn't rattle. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take them off, and we're going to transfer them to this 128 gigabyte SSD. Next up, you just plug it back in, seat the pegs into their holders, push it down, throw the bracket back on, screw the bracket back down, and there you go. We just upgraded the 2 most important parts of the MacBook Pro in 3 minutes. I just brought this from the relative Stone Age up to something that we can comfortably use and not want to throw at a wall. All we have to do, put the case back on, throw all 10 screws back in. And just like that, we're ready to turn her back on. She lives. So now let's talk about performance now that we've brought this dinosaur into the modern era. With the SSD and RAM upgrade, this thing is very, very, very comfortable to use. Unless you're using the brand new MacBooks, you probably won't be able to tell that much of a difference as far as performance. This thing is still reliable. It's a treat to type on, and that's coming from me. I love the butterfly keyboard. I'm one of those weirdos that should probably be investigated by the FBI because I like the butterfly keyboard. But this thing is great to type on. It's super comfortable. Trackpad could be a bit bigger, but it's still multi-touch. It's still got all the gestures. But this thing is flawless for web browsing, video playback, file management, light photo editing, light video editing. I used to edit a lot of videos on this MacBook in particular. And even back then it was nice, and I was running, I want to say Mojave at the time. Its maximum support is Catalina, natively from Apple, but you can patch it to Big Sur and Monterey, and I would imagine Ventura as well. Get subscribed though. I do have a video coming on macOS Ventura. I finally managed to get it installed on my iMac, but get subscribed for that. That should be coming pretty soon. But for really anything the average person needs a computer for, this is it. This can do it. That's a huge testament to how far technology's come. All right, so 2022 now, talking about a 2012 laptop 10 years ago, still incredibly usable. But flip the script, it's 2012, talking about a 10-year-old laptop. That would be my PowerBook G4 Titanium, right? My TiBook. I don't really think you could use those for that much, or at least as much back then compared to this than you can now with this compared to the new MacBooks. And that really makes me wonder, how usable is the M2 MacBook Air gonna be in 2032? But 10 years later, my thoughts, my review, this thing is incredible, and it's at a very, very reasonable, stomachable price. This is very, very frequently under $100 for a fully working unit. Now, yes, it's probably gonna have 4 gigs of RAM and the spinner drive, but the SSD that I put in this cost me 20 bucks. The RAM that I put in this cost me 8 bucks a stick. That is $36. So for $136, you can have a fully functioning MacBook that runs whatever you need to. Sure, it's a little outdated, but almost all apps still support it. It will do everything you need it to do. And for $100 bucks, Chromebooks aren't even that cheap. Come on, like, this is a no-brainer. So yes, 10 years later, this thing is still completely viable. And I do recommend it if you're just looking to pick up a cheap computer to do whatever, like a family laptop, or if you're looking to get into a Mac, if you're a Windows or a Linux user and you want to dip your toes in the water. $100 bucks, you cannot go wrong. I'll leave the links to eBay for these down in the description below. Go grab one, go pick one up. It's definitely worth it. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment if you're still using one of these. You know, any Unibody MacBook Pro from 2008 up to 2012. Let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video.